The second major idea in computer programming is the idea of repetition. I mean, humans don't like to repeat stuff over and over again. They get very bored very quickly. But a computer doesn't care. It'll do things a million times and it won't complain. And that is one of the powerful things about computer programming, this idea of repeating things or repetition. So what I want to show you today is how you write programs that repeat. And let's take a look at this one we have in front of us right now. I'll run it first and then we'll talk about the code inside. So for instance, the area of a circle. So I'm going to ask a person to enter the radius of a circle. Let's pretend I type in 4 and it works out the area. And then it says, do you want to do this again? This is the first time we've ever written a program where it doesn't stop after we run it. It's going to keep going. So if I say yes, I want to do this again, it asks me, okay, give me the radius of another one. And I type in 6, works out the area, and then it says, do you want to do it again? Well, this time I've had enough, and I press no, and I stop. Alright, so that's the concept of repetition. Let's take a look at what are the commands that make the computer repeat like that. So we'll double click inside of here. And this is working out the area of a circle, right? So we're going to ask the person for the radius. We're going to work out the area. We're also going to need pi. So I don't know if you remember the formula. Pi r squared is the area of a circle. Let's focus in on the brand new commands though. Look at this word here, while true. And it's got a squiggly line, and then this other squiggly line is the end of it. So basically, that's like a big circle to the computer. Everything between those two words, while true and that last little squiggly line, is going to be repeated. And what are you going to repeat? Well, you're going to ask the person for the radius. You're going to do a little bit of what we call dummy proofing. If a person types in a negative, there's no such thing. And we're going to yell at the person. Otherwise, remember that word we learned from before, if and else? Otherwise, we're going to work out the area of a circle. We're going to show the computer on the screen the answer to the computer. And then, this is different. We're going to ask the person, hey, do you want to do this again? Alright, so I have an input box where the answer gets stored in this word called response. So if the person says no, N for no, I break. So see this while and true? You're almost like you're stuck in there, you can't get out. The only way to get out is if you break free. Now, what if the person types in Y for yes? Well, then you don't break free. And then you go back up to the top and you do it again and again and again until you break free. Now, if you're looking at this if statement, you're going, sir, don't you always have to write those squiggly lines? Well, yes and no. If you've only got one thing to do after your if statement, you don't need the squiggly lines. Now, if you don't want to get all mixed up and say, well, how come it's one way for one thing and one way for another, you can always put them in. It won't change the question anymore. But if you've only got one thing to do after an if statement, you don't need the squiggly lines. But anyway, that's how you do what we call an infinite loop that's controlled by the user. You decide when to stop and then obviously when to keep going. The second kind of loop is kind of a counter-controlled loop. Let me run it again before I explain it to you. In this one, I'm not going to actually answer anything. The computer's not going to say, hey, give me a number. It's just going to do it. And this one does kind of a neat thing. It prints out a chart from Celsius to Fahrenheit. I don't know if you remember your science. Okay, you don't have to know the formula. I'll give it to you on a test or an assignment or whatever. But that prints out a chart. That's kind of cool. So first thing, this chart you're looking at is actually a text box. Alright, and it's got a couple of properties that you might have forgotten. Multi-line true, and the scroll bar is vertical. Now let's take a look at the code for this one. Now it too uses that word that we learned, while, but this one doesn't have while true. This one, like I mentioned, is called a counter-controlled loop, which means somewhere in here the computer is counting 1, 2, 3. When I get to certain numbers, stop. So look what I've got there. I've got Celsius equals 0. So that's like a special number that I'm going to use to go up. Then I've got the text box has a title, and there's that environment new line which will make the computer go down a line. And now I'm in the loop. And it says, while the Celsius is less than 20, well obviously it's less than 20, it's 0 right now. Work out the formula for Fahrenheit to Celsius, or Celsius to Fahrenheit in this case. I don't know if you remember that, but you times it by 9/5 and then you add 32. Now once you get that answer, this line right here, it's kind of funny, it's got this plus equals. What that means is join the last answer to the next one. So it joins this answer to this one. And this one prints out the Celsius. It tabs over, again, another little weird thing, so it moves over a little bit on the screen so it looks pretty. And then it prints out the Fahrenheit, and then it makes the computer go down to a new line. So that's why you see all those numbers one after each other. It's kind of a neat thing. You're going to use that a lot. Whoa, what's that? Well, let me write that another way for you for a second. That is, we're making the computer go up by 1. That's kind of like the cool way to go up by 1. Alright? That's what that line basically says, and I put this other one in comment so you get the idea. What if you wanted to go up by 2's? Here's what you would do. You'd go plus equals 2. Is that kind of neat? Alright? So you go plus plus just to go up by 1's, and you go plus equals to go up by 2's. Now, in the old style way, you could do it like that too. Either way would work. So you could do it the new style way, plus equals 2 like that, or write it like that. Watch this one. This is going up by 2's. Watch what it's going to do when you print it out. 2, 4, 6, 8, all the way to 20. Okay, and then it prints out the Fahrenheit numbers. Okay, so that kind of loop is called a counter-controlled loop. Next two kinds of loops. Kind of fun, the next two. The next loop is called a for loop. Alright, actually this one I'll show you the program before I give you the answer. This one, when you know ahead of time exactly where you want to start and where you want to end, what you can do is have the computer do this thing called a for loop. And the way you set it up is you tell the computer start at a number. So I'm starting at 1. This is how you tell the computer to go up to 100. And remember what I just showed you a few seconds ago? This means go up by 2's. So we're going to start at 1 and go up by 2's. And actually, when you do that, you're probably not going to get quite to 100. You're going to get to like 99 probably. And this one, what it does is it adds up the sum of the cubes, which is kind of weird. Sum of the cubes mean if you have the first number as 1 and you cube it, you get 1. Plus 2 cubed. 2 cubed is 8. So now you've got 1 and the 8, and that's 9 altogether. And you keep going. You get 3 cubed is 27. So you've got 1 plus 8 plus 27, which is what, 35, 36. And you keep going and going and going. When you run that, this one doesn't print out 10,000 things. It just prints out the final answer. If you added up all the sum of the cubes between 1 and 100, that's what you get. Okay? So you notice this one went up by 2, so it was the sum of all the odd numbers between 1 and 100. Right? If you wanted to go up by 1s, you could do this too. 1 plus equals 1, or plus plus. All of them work. Okay? They'll all work and they'll do the job for you. Alright, the craziest one is when you have to do combinations. Now combinations mean take a look at all this. Alright, we're trying to figure out all the areas for the combinations 1, okay, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for the lengths, and then for the widths 5, 10, 15, 20. So it's almost like if you're doing like a lottery, trying to figure out every possible combination you could have. This one involves what's called a double loop. So you've got one loop, and inside of that you've got another loop. And notice how it goes. It uses those for loops. So this one I wanted the lengths between 1 and 5 going up by 1s. The inner loop starts off at 5 and it goes to 20 going up by 5s. So that one would go like 5, 10, 15, 20. This works out the area when you times those combinations, and this puts it in the text box. So this one's kind of a combination question. Sometimes you get a thing like that on an assignment. Now let's give you some hints for your big assignment on selection and repetition. This example here, just to give you an idea what it's going to do, we'll start off with a basic example of it. So I'm going to ask a person for a mark, 67. Do you wish to continue? Yes. So this one, I don't know when I'm going to stop. I've got a pile of marks I got to work out the average for. So I'll type in another one. Somebody got 90. Do you wish to continue? So see, this one is user-defined repetition. You're doing it until you say, I'm done. And then when you press no, you work out the average. All right? Let's do it one more time really quickly. Do you wish to continue? No. Well, there's no marks entered then. You don't work out the average. Because if you don't have any numbers to work out, I don't want you to say the average is 0. Okay, so let's take a look at how this program works, and then we're going to modify it to make it match your actual assignment. So this one uses the kind of thing where it's going to run forever, a while true. And we're going to work out people's averages, you got to know how many times you ask the person, what's your mark, what's your mark, what's your mark? Because if you say that 3 times, you're going to divide by 3. You also have to keep track of the grand total of their marks. Okay, and the fancy word for that is called accumulating. So here's what we do when we start off. We obviously ask the person, do you want to do this? Like if you had enough, okay? Right at the beginning, not at the end, but right at the beginning. And if they say, do you wish to continue? Yes or no. If they say no, we break, okay, like I've shown you before. If they don't break, then you ask them for a mark. Now, if they want to be idiots and type in something bad like -1,000 or +1,000, you're going to yell at them. So here's where I say if the mark is less than 0 or greater than 100, that's no good. Otherwise, you count it. All right, so remember, you can count this way. If that still confuses you, you can write it like this. Okay, and all that does is tell the computer whatever the counter was, and at the beginning the counter is 0, make it go up by 1. So now one person has entered their mark. Second thing is now let's add up their mark. So if they told you they got a 90, great. Okay, the total so far is 90. Now the next person or the next mark you enter goes into the computer's brain. So let's pretend this time the guy's mark is an 80. So that's a good mark. And now the counter is, well, it was 1, so now it's 2. And the guy's total was 90 from the last one. Now you're going to add another one. So 90 and 80 is 170. Okay? So you're keeping track of all that. And what happens after you do this a whole bunch of times, when you get out of the loop, you're going to work out the average. Now, that's kind of a fancy way to say if the count doesn't equal 0, which means, if you've got at least one person, then work out the average. Because I don't know if you realize it, if you were to divide by 0, because there would be like no people, you'd get a bad error. That's called infinity. So now you take the total, 180 or 70 or whatever you got, and you divide it by 2, and that works out the average. Now some hints for your assignment. Basically, let me run the program and I'll give you a rough idea of what you need to do. So you're going to need to ask people their ages. Say I 12 years old, height 45. Yes, I want to do it again. 13-year-old, height 78. Do you wish to continue? 14-year-old, height 87. Do you wish to continue? Yes, I'll type in one more. A 14-year-old, height 67. Do you wish to continue? No. And it displays the averages. Now, I only showed you this program working for people aged 12 to 14. You have to do it a little bit longer, but I think this is going to be a good enough hint to give you an idea how to do it. So let's take a look at how you do this type of a program. Okay, so following from what I just showed you a few minutes ago, basically you're going to be using some sort of counter and accumulator, but you're going to need more of them because you got different people. So I'm going to have 3 counters or more. I've got 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, and 14-year-olds in this example. I'm also going to need to grand total their heights. So I have accumulator 12, 13, and 14. And I'm also going to have to work out their averages. So there's a lot of little things you have to do. You're going to do even more because you're going to have more ages. I'm also going to ask the person a basic age and a basic height. And I'm also going to ask them, do you want to keep doing this? Now I do that thing with the while true. Now notice how this is at the very top, while, and then way at the bottom right there is the end of the loop. So in here I'm going to keep doing it like a million times until I've had enough. So I basically say, do you want to do this? And if they say no, I get out. If they say yes, I ask them for their age and their height. Now, everybody's going to have a different average, each category. So first of all, a little bit of dummy proofing. If they type in a stupid answer, I'm going to yell at them. Otherwise, I'm going to say, hey, are you 12 years old? If you are, hey, I got a 12-year-old. Counter equals counter plus 1. Hey, and I'm going to accumulate your height. I'm going to add your grand total height. Okay? Next thing, I got a 13-year-old. I'm going to count you. I'm going to accumulate your height. I got a 14-year-old. I'm going to count you, and I'm going to accumulate your height. Then, after the loop's done, so you notice that squiggly line, and then right after the end of the squiggly line, I work out the people's averages, and then I display their final results. Now, if you saw that, that's a big hint, but what Mr. Schwelly is not going to tell you is the following. What if you do the following? You want to continue? Yes. You enter an age. I type in a 12-year-old. Enter a height. And then I do the following. Do you wish to continue? No. Uh-oh. It just crashed on me. Divide by 0. You're going to have to figure that out yourself. Take care and good luck.